Good afternoon. For those of you who are just joining us, my name's Don Wilford, Managing Director of Corporate Planning at the Ontario Centres of Excellence. Our next presentation is from the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Canada, DFAIT. The Canadian Trade Commissioner Service can help companies succeed globally and lower costs of doing business through 4 key services: preparing for international markets, assessing market potential, finding qualified contacts, and resolving problems. To better explain these services is Jim Feir, DFAIT's Director and Senior Trade Commissioner, Ontario Region. After graduating from the University of Manitoba in 1975, Jim joined the Department of Industry, Trade and Commerce Trade Commissioner Service and has had a very distinguished career abroad in Seoul, Havana, Melbourne, Lisbon, Singapore, Sydney, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, and in Los Angeles from 2005 to 2009 as Senior Trade Commissioner and Deputy Consul General. He assumed his present responsibilities as Director and Senior Trade Commissioner, Ontario Region in 2009. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Jim will be delighted to answer. That said, please welcome Jim.
Thank you very much, Don, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me commence by, first of all, acknowledging with great thanks from the Department of Foreign Affairs, International Trade Canada, our friends at OCE for, again this year, organizing a tremendous event and allowing us to have an opportunity in the context of it to present some of the aspects of our department and of the Trade Commissioner Service. And the service is available through the TCS to Canadian firms and organizations looking to internationalize their efforts. I have a bit of a presentation this afternoon that will talk about the department and about some of the services we're offering. So let me just begin clicking. There we are. Click the button and there it changes. I'm also missing, I don't have any musical accompaniment. So I unlike my preceding presenter, Pamela Cantor, I don't have that in the background, but we'll work without. This afternoon, we'll talk a little bit about the role of the department, for those of you who may not be as familiar with our broader picture role of the Trade Commissioner Service in particular, what we in the Ontario region do in support of our department and our departmental colleagues globally in working with Ontario-based organizations in particular as they look to engage globally. And that would be, for anyone who may be participating but from outside the province, something that you would see replicated by our colleagues in regional offices across the country, and we'll touch on that a little bit more. And then also to talk about a couple of the programs that we offer through the department or support and deliver through the department that are particularly associated with the topic of innovation and engagement of innovation internationally. So very rapidly, what is the department? For most of you, you probably are familiar with the embassies, the consulates, the trade offices abroad. If not, hopefully when you become familiar with them, it's for all the positive reasons that you're there to be doing business, you're there to be engaging in opportunities. It's not because you've lost a passport or you've had other difficulties. But we do all of these things with the embassies and consulates. We're also, as a department, responsible for Canada's engagement in a multitude of multilateral institutions and also responsible for a variety of international treaties and arrangements, some of which, and later on we'll touch on a couple of those in the realm of international science and technology agreements, form part of what the department is responsible for. If we looked at the department's 4 key functions, they're listed on the slide. Now, the real one that I would want to highlight to you this afternoon as being what we're really to talk about here is probably best encapsulated in bullet 3 and the reference there to providing global commerce services. Commerce, Trade Commissioner Service, has a certain implication for folks. What I would like to put in the context of 2011 for everyone to be understanding is when we speak of that trade and commerce, it's really nowadays inclusive of all facets of international business. So yes, trade in goods and services, but increasingly collaboration, cooperation, and innovation, acquiring technology, exporting technology, looking for joint venture partners, investment towards Canada, support of Canadian direct investment abroad, where that helps to bolster the Canadian enterprises' capabilities to compete in a global environment. So when I use that word and when we speak of the Trade Commissioner Service, which I might reflect this year is celebrating its 116th year of existence. So for many of you that may not be familiar with it, it has been around for a while. It's relatively stable and consistent. It's a resource that for many years has been available. When our Ontario friends were presenting a few moments ago, there was a reference to unknown or unrecognized resource by one of their company presenters. I might reflect that we often feel that the Trade Commissioner Service is an unknown resource to Canadian enterprises. So we are here at an event like this and here today at the Discovery to make sure that as many Canadian organizations that are looking global recognize that there is a resource through the department and through the Trade Commissioner Service that's there to help you. If you don't know much about us, here we are. Did you know? So we've got this capacity internationally, sizable presence abroad as a department. We have partnerships and collaboration on behalf of the whole of government, the whole of the Canadian federal government, with partner departments co-located in many of our missions abroad. As again, our friends from Ministry of Economic Development, Trade with Ontario were reflecting, we also are very happy to be partners with the provinces in their international presence. So MEDT has colleagues abroad in many of our missions, as do other provinces in Canada. So again, working collaboratively. Here in Canada, we have a network of regional offices, the Ontario Regional Office and the Toronto office in particular being one of them, so 12 regional offices across Canada, but in fact also supported now by 6 satellite offices, 3 of which are here in the province of Ontario. And again, I'll highlight that in another second. If we looked at the TCS, so the Trade Commissioner Service in particular, here we have presence in more than 170 cities worldwide and the 18 offices in Canada, the regional office network. You'll see from this slide that we're providing services to a sizable number of Canadian companies, so 10 to 15,000 per year. But if you looked at the pool of Canadian enterprises, and particularly the small, medium-sized enterprises that are looking to engage globally, that number represents only a small part of the real potential demand that we feel is out there in terms of Canadian organizations with which we would want to be working. Specifically at the level of what the trade commissioners do, both abroad at our missions as well as here domestically in Canada and within the regional office context, there's sort of 4 primary aspects of the work we would do. But again, I think the challenge these days is you like to try to quantify and create sort of that bullet description, but recognizing that business, be it domestic business or international business, has a whole continuum of needs and dimensions. So the reality of what we're trying to do is to be collaborative partners and working with Canadian enterprise to assist them as they navigate their way through a whole myriad of issues that might be part of how do I engage globally? How do I do business outside the borders of Canada? How may I do better business even within Canada, but leveraging something from abroad? So we're there to do that. Broadly encapsulating it, if you're a Canadian enterprise, an Ontario-based organization firm looking at how we can start to help you, it may be at the very first step of preparation for international market. What kinds of things do you need to know? What kinds of resources should you be connected with as you want to engage globally? Once you're ready to be launched internationally, and particularly with our colleagues at Posts Abroad, they're working to help identify the market potential for you. What is it you're looking to do? And again, is it a selling to the market, but is it a partnering in the market? Is it a joint venture? Is it an investment? So again, that market potential assessment as you've progressed along. As you engage further and you're making your decisions on what you want to do, then we're talking about qualified contacts in that market. And again, it can be a contact with whom you do the business, but it can also be contacts that help you to do the business in that marketplace, other intermediaries, third-party service providers, other knowledge sources that can be important for you. And then ultimately, but whether it's ultimately or the least wanted element is the problem solving. Now, problem solving can be very front-end problem solving of being sure you're aware of issues that relate to regulatory issues in a given market or tax or tariff or other issues like that. But in some cases, problem solving can be exactly that. You've walked into some kind of a pitfall, it's creating a problem, you've got an issue, how do you get it fixed in the marketplace abroad, and through our intermediary role here in the regional office, we may be able to help with that. So I've already reflected a little bit on the preparing for international markets. I'm not going to go through each 4 of them in great detail, but if we sort of said again from an Ontario region perspective, domestically here in Canada, what we start with, we're sort of talking here at that preparation for international market and through the network of our colleagues in the region and with our other network of partners with whom we work, and again, mentioning certainly the province, MEDT, and others that I'll talk about in a few moments. We clearly leverage the larger network of agencies and entities that are located here in Canada and here in the province of Ontario that are all working to help Canadian enterprises engage globally. One entity that exists here in Ontario is something that is called the Regional Trade Network. These exist across Canada, more or less. In Ontario, specifically, it's the Canada-Ontario Export Forum. It is co-chaired by ourselves and by the Ministry of Economic Development, Trade, Ontario, and it involves 22 other departments, agencies, both federal and provincial, all focused on helping Ontario organizations go global, do business abroad, engage abroad. So all of that is part of what we call that preparation for international markets. Amongst the sorts of things we're doing, and again, I'm not going to go one by one on this, but it's an indicative list to demonstrate that yes, exports is still a part of what the Trade Commissioner Service is engaged with and the department is engaged with, but really we are engaged in a whole realm of other aspects of business and of support to business, be it business of a small size, a small, medium, startup entrepreneur enterprise, or clearly to supporting and assisting larger firms as they progress down various aspects of global business. So again, that's an indicative list. We won't go through them one by one, but questions later if anybody has questions. I mentioned earlier that we have COEF, the Canada-Ontario Export Forum, as a partnership group. We work with the province, with MEDT, with MRI, I might flag as well, as a very important partner for us as we work along, particularly in the innovation space. But other partners that we work not only here in Ontario but across the country and globally with as important elements of that support to Canadian business going global are groups like Export Development Canada, the Canadian Commercial Corporation, Business Development Bank of Canada, the province we've mentioned, and then very clearly with business and industry associations and other entities that group business organizations and other entities together in various combinations. We're trying to leverage all of those to maximize our reach and our capacity to engage. So again, those are some indicative outlines of with whom we work. In a few cases, for example, like with the Business Development Canada, we have in fact now a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with them since last year that is related to client referrals so that we engage clients more effectively in a two-way flow back and forth across our respective networks. Just very rapidly with the Ontario Regional Office, so we've got a structure, 29 here in Toronto, 3 satellite offices mentioned below, Windsor, Waterloo, and Ottawa. So we have 3,500 colleagues working on Sussex in 2 buildings that are Foreign Affairs and International Trade. We have 1 trade commissioner, although there's many trade commissioners there, but there is 1 trade commissioner on Queen Street in Ottawa working out of the BDC office there to deliver street-level support service to Canadian enterprises in the National Capital Region. Here in Toronto, and in the Ontario region more generally, but in Toronto, we're organized across a couple of sectoral focuses. So Advanced Manufacturing Technologies is a group, ICT Health Industries is a group, and then Investment, Innovation, and Services is another group. Within that last group, let me highlight 2 colleagues that are in the room. Pratima Rao, who is just seated up here in second row. Pratima is our Technology and Innovation Officer in the regional office, and behind her, Janice Vogel is Deputy Director for that whole unit, so combining that investment, innovation, and services continuum. So for those that are looking at innovation and engagement with our system, 2 key folks in the regional office to talk to. Moving along towards some of the programs that we, the department, and therefore we in the regional office have an engagement in, both for delivery or for support, there's a number. And so initially we've got ones like the Global Opportunities for Associations. If you're an industry association, this is a resource to turn to through the department that supports international marketing initiatives, possibly participation at trade fairs, events, and other organizations. So certain groups, such as the Ontario Aerospace Council, others have availed themselves of support through programs like that to assist them as they work with their membership to go abroad. The Invest Canada Communities Initiative, again, is particularly oriented towards supporting communities, in this case here in Ontario, as they develop resources that support them for attracting foreign direct investment into their communities. I might reflect that the success of that in the last numbers of years has been largely focused on successful attraction of innovation sector actors from abroad. So again, strengthening, bolstering the innovation capacity here in the province of Ontario. Another program that since January of last year, so about now 18 months ago, has been with the department is in the Investment Cooperation Program. Used to be with CEDA, used to support Canadian firms doing a lot of pre-feasibility study work on competing or bidding on projects abroad in the development space. The new program is slightly reoriented towards supporting Canadian firms that have investment or are looking to invest abroad as they work on sustainability and enhancement of that footprint abroad to sustain their global profitability and global success. So again, it's a slight shift in that program, but one that we are involved with. And then another that's very particular for the audience this afternoon and within the context of Discovery, we have the Going Global Innovation Program, which is providing assistance for Canadian researchers to help develop international R&D partnerships. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Sort of as a segue from that to something else that we also have an involvement with, but in fact delivery is handled by ISTP Canada, is the International Science and Technology Partnerships Program, which has been around for a number of years. It is currently focused on a number of bilateral partnerships. India, China, Brazil, and Israel are highlighted there. Subset of that to a certain degree, we have the Canada-California Strategic Innovation Partnership, which is now about 3.5, 4 years in existence, which fostered a relationship with the University of California system in particular, and 14 science-based research intensive institutions across Canada as partners, again trying to develop some innovative connections that support innovation and partnering in innovation. Some great successes there in the realm of stem cell advances, and that particularly played into the Ontario and Toronto space several years back. Some interesting connections using broadband capacities to enhance the pipeline available for collaborative work between institutions and researchers working at both ends of that, for example. So some examples within that framework, but the ISTPP is involved in funding these bilateral research projects, stimulating networking to develop new partners. So an important program that many institutions are availing themselves of. Flipping back then to the Going Global Innovation, having had that little detour to ISTPP, if we looked at what is this and how does it work, this slide presents some of the detail. There are experts in the room, and if they're not in the room right now, we also have a Department of Foreign Affairs International Trade Canada booth just outside there, one aisle over. So as the course of the next day and a bit goes forward and you want to touch base with anybody there to ask more questions on the detail of this, if Pratima's not around or Janice is not around or I'm not around, happy to help out on that. I also would highlight for this particular program, Erica, you're also a resource that we can turn to, Erica Mallette from Ottawa, so visiting from Ottawa today, who can be a resource for that. But Going Global Innovation, it's a grant that is promoting and enhancing Canada's international innovation efforts. It's assisting Canadian researchers connect with international collaborative R&D opportunities through development of partnerships. So it's not funding the thing that will be done, it's funding how you get the people together that will do the thing that will be done sort of thing. So it's that very front end, early stage, how do you make the connections with the right people you want to work with? And so it's a resource that can help you do that in a strategic and targeted fashion, of course. So it is building on these targeted relationships between Canadian companies, organizations, researchers, and key players. And I think the information that I've heard over recent years is increasingly that program, this program when it first began, had a fairly intensive focus on sort of academic space research. Last several years, the shift has been significantly towards industry, business-based research, innovation, companies, and that acting. And that's the positive thing when you talk about how do we foster innovation at a business level that is commercializable pretty quickly down the track. So I think it's a very positive program, and if you're not familiar with it and you want to understand how you could perhaps take advantage of it, please task us to understand more. Who is eligible to apply? Here's some basic quick snapshots. So it's an SME-oriented program. Universities can apply, but like I say, the shift is there that we're maybe seeing a little bit more non-academic engagement of it. Non-government research centers, so bottom line is that it's not something that government can take advantage of per se. It's a government program, but not for us to take advantage of. Fair amount of density on this slide, what's eligible. So I'm not going to really talk about this. Again, you can find out more about it, but there's a fairly good range of eligible costs that are, again, part of what you might need to invest in to initially access the network abroad that you want to work with. But how do you get there to eyeball them? How do you get there to connect with them to understand whether you've got a similar synergy of what you're trying to accomplish? So this is elements that can support you to get yourself across there. Also, as always, there's certain things that are not eligible. So there's a few things at the bottom of the slide there that aren't explicitly going to be covered through the program. Here you are, got a minimum. If you want 4,500, don't apply, or else find a way to make your costs up to 5,000 or more. But it's got that minimum threshold, maximum 75,000. Stacking limits are in place, and again, it's part of an array of different government programs that might be beneficial to certain organizations looking forward, but you have that stacking situation, and then 8 weeks in advance of project commencement date to get your applications in. And I think for that, just again to emphasize, in our office, again, in the context of our region, Protima is a very important player in the process of the GGI. So if you've got questions or queries and you're here in Ontario, Protima can certainly be a resource to immediately turn to for that as you're setting yourself up to be ahead of the 8-week deadline and what the rules are for in and out and so on. Here we can just have a quick snapshot. I don't know, you can see Ontario is in the purplish color there. So I don't know what happened in Ontario in 2004, but something happened. I guess people kind of said, "Ooh, we've been innovating and doing enough here for a while, let's slow down." But generally speaking, through the horizon of that timeline, you'll see that Ontario uptake of GGI has been quite significant as a portion of the total national distribution. Sectorally, if you look at where the funds have flowed, again, very much in line with what we're talking about broadly in innovation and in the technology space. So significant to ICT, significant to clean tech, significant to life sciences, which I guess is that slightly bluish color off to the side there, and then a small amount to kind of the rest of everything you might imagine you do that would apply. So again, pretty strong alignment with Ontario's sectoral capacities, although again, this is the national data. If you look at where these relationships are that are being supported and fostered by the GGI, you'll see clearly that the significant array top 7 priority markets fall, or almost 70% of the projects are in the top 7 markets, of which China is by far the largest, although USA right there, Germany, Japan, UK, France, India, you can read all of those as well. But again, that's indicative of the areas of the world where innovation is happening, where partners are increasingly available and looking to work with Canadian innovators and creators to collaborate. So that's also good. We do have, for example, here a local success story to quickly share with you, but the Waterloo Institute of Nanotechnology was an applicant, and in fact, I do believe they've given permission to say this. We're not letting a cat out of a bag or something, or a small cat out of the bag if it's nano. Sorry, I try to liven these things up a little bit. In any event, again, it was a funded and supported initiative to Japan in 2009-10 and also to Israel in 2010. There had been previous support for a mission to India. The outcome of all of that is, particularly of the Israel trip, were some of the most tangible. And again, you'll see there some research collaborations, a transfer agreement, an economic partnership. So clearly from this, you can leverage outcome and value. The effort has to be there, but the program does support these kinds of activities, engagements that do lead to success. And we're seeing more and more successes from around the globe, and that's clearly what the program is all about. Very rapidly then, for some of the program contacts, we've got back in Ottawa for ISTPP, should you want that. And I think this presentation will be available electronically through the discovery system, so you can either try to write all this down rapidly or wait for it to come to you electronically. But you'll see for ISTPP, Valerie Latraverse in Ottawa is a key point of contact. Going global, as I've mentioned, Pratima Rao here in Toronto. For those that are in Ontario, key point of contact. And for the GGI Program Administration in Ottawa, in particular, Erica, who's with us this afternoon as well, to highlight to you. So I think that concludes what I had to say amongst the things that I had to say. But if there are other questions, as suggested by Don, either I'm happy to take them, or depending what that question is, I'm happy to try to defer it to one of my colleagues in the room. I might mention that over the course of Discovery today and tomorrow, we do have a number of our Trade Commissioner colleagues from around the globe, from Asia Pacific, from Europe, from the United States present here around the show. I know there is the online system that you can try to matchmake yourself and connect, so if you haven't looked at that, please do so. Again, if you're not quite sure who may be around, check at our booth, and we're happy to also try to coordinate. In the room right now, I see Carl Pilon from Stockholm, Sweden, is sitting here. Standing at the back, didn't want to come in the room, you don't want to listen to me there, Albert, but Albert Lee, currently in Asia Pacific, but transitioning, so we'll sort of say wait for him to land, but he has been in the region for a while and he's about to land back in the region, I think so. But we're here as a resource, and that global resource is at your disposal to assist you as you want to engage with the international marketplace. So thank you very much for your attention, and if there are questions, feel free to fire away. Thank you.
So the final presentation comes from the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. So that office is an agency of Industry Canada, that's federal, and it's a prime source of information to help you understand the strategic value of intellectual property and to support you in turning your innovation ideas into tangible assets in the marketplace. CIPO administers the IP regime in Canada and is here to serve innovators, inventors, and creators, and to accelerate our economy. So on behalf of CIPO, our presenter today is Dumitru Olariu, a business development officer with extensive experience. In fact, Dumitru has worked for almost 27 years with the office, first as a patent examiner before becoming a business development officer. Before that, he worked for 6 years in the electronics industry. He's a professional engineer, and his educational background includes an MSc in electrical engineering and an MBA. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Dumitru, I'm sure, will be very pleased to do an excellent job of answering them. So with that said, welcome, Dumitru.
Thank you very much. Hi all. It's so nice to see so many innovators here at this kind of event. And we are pleased to be for the first time at this event. And we are also pleased that we have a chance to speak about intellectual property to you. And the theme of today is connect to intellectual property while you are preparing to get your innovations to the market. And let me start the presentation by reading some inspiring words from the director of World Intellectual Property Office, Mr. Francis Gurry. He said, with the quickening pace of technological evolution and the increasingly central role it plays in economic and social well-being, the focus of intellectual property system is intensifying and sharpening. It's so much true. And let me give you an example. When you open a newspaper and you look in a science and technology section or in the business section, you have a great chance to see an intellectual property issue of some sort. So let's go a little bit through intellectual property, what it is, why it's so important, what is CIPO, what you can get from us. In general terms, intellectual property deals with the creations of the mind. So it might be something related to science and technology, and that be the subject of a patent protection, a form of intellectual property. Might be branding, for example, that it differentiates products and services. of different persons. That would be another form of intellectual property. Trademarks. You probably heard of copyrights, that it's usually related to cultural creations. So all these are followed by a right, an exclusive right that you may get in order to stop someone of using that creation, or by allowing other person to use this creation. We will give you more examples in the next slide as well. But why intellectual property is so important? First, you get that right to stop some people to go on the ground that you already conquered by having that intellectual property right. So it's a very powerful competitive advantage that you might have in the market. Second, because following your ideas, you create something of value, and intellectual property assets may be sold, traded, or acquired as any other assets. And they are very valuable. There are companies relying on their intellectual property assets, and in many situations, their intellectual property assets surpass the value of the physical assets of the company. Why intellectual property also is important? When you file, for example, for a patent protection, you have to submit some sort of information about how the invention is built, how it works. For an industrial design, you have an obligation to submit drawings showing the visual features of that design. So all this information is gathered in our files, plus other valuable information that it might be related to that intellectual property right. So by searching in our files, you'll be able to find what's new in the marketplace, who owns what, and what kind of protection that person might enforce. So in an intellectual property document, you usually have legal information, some business information, because you'll have an idea about who is active in a field of technology or another, and also, especially in the patent documents and industrial design documents, you have valuable technological information, that know-how. It's critical to have intellectual property protection for innovators, because in many situations, by having these intellectual property rights, you simply are able to pay off for R&D costs. Let me give you a couple of examples. So you're probably familiar with this bottle that it's displayed here. I mentioned that intellectual property has value. But the question is, if intellectual property has value, what you'll do with that to enhance the value? So the question is, first, do I keep it secret or I disclose it? If you keep it secret, as it was in the case of Coca-Cola company, that they kept secret their formula for so many years, 100 years and so, you may extract value by having that kind of trade secret. So trade secret is any kind of confidential information that might be used for a business and gives you a competitive advantage. You may decide to disclose your idea. In that situation, for example, if you have an invention that is any product, process, or composition of matter that is new, useful, and inventive, you may obtain a patent, but you have to disclose that. So you have decided to disclose, and you get that kind of limited protection. And the same is for industrial design as well. If you decide to have a marketing strategy and you are thinking probably of using that creation that is a brand, that's a trademark protection. And the trademark type of intellectual property covers any word, slogan, even the distinguishing guise of like the shape of this Coca-Cola bottle might be a trademark because it identifies the product that is in that bottle. So Coca-Cola got protection first as a trade secret, then as a trademark for the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle. You have to differentiate between patents and industrial designs as well, because patents will cover, in many situations, products that might have functional features, but you are not able to claim in an industrial design application. You have here an example of a shoe. Whatever is the functional features might be protected by a patent, but whatever is just visual aspect, pattern, ornamentation, shape, it's covered by an industrial design. Let me talk a little bit, who is CIPO? CIPO, Canadian Intellectual Property Office, is an agency of Industry Canada, it's responsible for the administration of the main types of intellectual property in Canada, and they are patents, trademarks, copyrights, industrial designs, and integrated circuit topographies. So CIPO has that responsibility to grant intellectual property rights, but also disseminates the business, legal, and technological information that I mentioned that it gathered in its databases. So you have patent, trademark, industrial design, and even copyright databases that you may search online. So CIPO has a mandate to disseminate all this information. And by the way, the largest source of technological information that exists in Canada, you'll find it in the patent database. It's the largest database in the government as well. And CIPO tries to encourage innovations, creativity, invention by reaching out, especially to the business community, with presentations like this one. And I will go even further and present you the main outreach activities of the CIPO in the next slides. Just to mention to you that CIPO is very active internationally, and it's considered one of the leading intellectual property offices in the world. So, two key initiatives I would like to mention today for you is one is called the Bank of Speakers. And what are they? They are presentations on intellectual property topics delivered by speakers who belong to this Bank of Speakers of CIPO. And they are professionals in the field. They are intellectual property registered agents and lawyers, and they deliver this kind of presentations. It's a free program, and any group interested in such a presentation may request that. It's very entertaining, and people may ask a professional, a specialist, very I would say any kind of intellectual property questions and get answers that may go as much as you can go close to a legal advice. Another intellectual property outreach initiative, it's called the Intellectual Property Case Studies. It's a recent initiative, and to try to reach out to the post-secondary students from colleges and universities. And what these case studies are, they are fictitious business situations, but with real intellectual property issues. And we supply professors from colleges and universities with the copies of the case studies, even with a discussion leader guide. And if the professor is not familiar with the topic, we may supply even such a discussion leader. So we send someone to facilitate the discussion in class. I encourage you to use both initiatives. Both are free. You have the information there on how to request a presentation on the Bank of Speakers or an intellectual property case study. Just in a nutshell, what are CIPO's outreach services? Probably the first and primary source of information that you may reach out to intellectual property information is the website. So you may go to our website, and from there you find guides, manuals, and we have almost everything you want in terms of, regardless of your level of intellectual property, I would say. You may start, if you are not too familiar with intellectual property, with our standard publication. It's called Stand Out from Your Competitors. It walks you from different types of intellectual property and also gives you hints where to get more in-depth information. We decided for that title because it helps you understand how intellectual property works for your business, how it might work in your business strategy by putting in sync your intellectual property strategy or using of intellectual property assets with other assets of the company. We also have a client service center that it's available during business hours with a toll-free number. You have business development officers like myself across the country, and we try to promote these days the main two key initiatives that I mentioned in the previous slide. They are Bank of Speakers and intellectual property case studies, and they are mentioned here. So we are almost at the end of the presentation. My advice is to connect to intellectual property, even from early stages of research and development, while you are getting your innovations to the market. You shouldn't neglect intellectual property. You should have, even from very beginning of the research, some sort of intellectual property strategy. That's how you'll be able to succeed, how you'll be able to make intellectual property work for you. So I invite you to use the Client Service Center. I also invite you to visit us at the booth if you have intellectual property questions or any questions that you might have even right now. If I understand correctly, your question is about when you should contact or get more information about intellectual property when you do R&D work?
Regarding freedom to operate investigation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. For freedom to operate, that's your question. How you'll get advice? Yeah, best thing would be to consult a registered patent agent or lawyer, because they will be able to do a professional patent search and give you an advice. It would be like advice on infringement, if you infringe in someone else's rights. So let's not forget why you are interested in intellectual property. First, it has value, but also you want to avoid costly mistakes. And that's why you ask for a freedom to operate advice. And the best thing is to go on on the CIPO website and see. You'll see there a list of registered patent agents and lawyers, and just consult one. Yes, please.
So, can you remind me how it works? People file an application in Canada. Is there a period where after a while it's laid open, so it's available to see patent applications in process? Is that available in Canada, or is that just in America?
Yeah, actually it's available in Canada for a long time, starting in '87. In the States starts these days or these years. What it means, once you file a patent application, 18 months, if you'll not request to withdraw it, will be laid open, so anyone can see it. It's not yet a patent granted. It's a pending patent application. And if you request an examination, you have an examination done by one of our examiners, and then the patent is granted. And usually this happens in 2-3 years, but you have up to 5 years to request an examination. Some people don't even request because they simply renounce at pursuing and obtaining the patent.
So is there a mechanism for people to automatically receive laid open patents? Or do you have to request them on one by one?
If you want not to have your laid open patent application, it's a little bit vice versa. If you want to have you have a patent application in the very beginning for 18 months following the filing date is confidential. If you want to keep it confidential forever, you have to take steps to withdraw it. Otherwise, automatically will show up in our patent database.
So if you do not request an examination within 18 months,
No, the examination you have up to 5 years to request it.
okay, but if you do not request it, you don't abandon it, but you do not request it, after 18 months it's laid open?
Actually, you request examination anytime up to 5 years, even after it's laid open. But
You made a point that you could protect laying the patent open. I'm talking about protecting your application against competitors. That's what I'm talking about. Once a patent is laid open, it provides information
to competitors,
to competitors.
right.
You said you could protect that. How can you protect that?
In Canada, it works a little bit like that. You don't have protection unless you obtain a patent. The patent is granted.
If you
It's
get the patent, well then
And that happens 2-3 years down the road. So if you obtain a patent 2-3 years down the road, you may go back up to the laid open date and claim retroactive protection for whoever infringed your patent during that period of time when your patent application is pending.
infringement, I'm just asking the question about how can people, and you could be the competitor because you may want to know who filed some patent. So you're saying after 18 months, it's laid open.
Right.
That's correct? Unless you abandon it, which then it's withdrawn.
Yeah, we withdraw it.
Okay. So it automatically does, and then after 5 years.
Yeah.
And okay, that's all. That was my question.
Anyway, if you want to go further, we may talk.
I was just wondering if you have a service for that, because people working in a certain market space care about what the competitors are doing, what patents they have filed, and it seems to me, but you don't have a service where you can just say, any patents in the area of, I don't know, medical devices, please send them to me, the ones that are laid open. You have to go in on an individual basis.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, please. Yeah, you are. Yeah. For the others who probably didn't hear the question was about what happens if you file in Canada and you would like to file the same patent application in the United States. Actually, you have to file worldwide in the same time. When I say in the same time, the patent world mean within a year, so-called convention priority year. And you have two options: to file individually in each country you are seeking protection, Canada, US, and others. You may also file with the Canadian Patent Office, which is an international patent office as well, an international patent application, and designate as many as 80 countries right now. It costs you more, but the beauty of the system is you file with one patent office in one language, and you pursue in the very beginning just one patent application, and later on decide which country you'll go on further and pay for translation and so on.
I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to ask a question, but I read an article about legal discovery being done through artificial intelligence. In other words, computers are now searching documents instead of real people. Are we close to that happening? Patents and patents?
Yeah, I heard myself about that, and anyway, at this stage, we cannot replace the patent examiner's work with some sort of intelligent systems that will examine patent applications. We have, however, an understanding with other patent offices. You mentioned that you will seek protection in the United States and others. We have an understanding, even like a memorandum of understanding with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It's called Patent Highway. What it means is that the United States Patent Examiner's work is recognized in Canada and vice versa. So it speeds up a little bit the process of examination. Yes, please. at what stage a company may file a patent application? That's your question?
So you invent something, right? And it's not fully operational, but it has the concepts there.
Mm-hmm.
The novel concept, can you apply for patent event or the wait until it's fully operational?
Oh, I think the question is, do you have to have a functional, operational prototype before you file for a patent application, or you can do it based on the concept? Yeah. Actually, we will not ask you for a prototype. We will ask you for a full description of your invention. So theoretically, you may do it even having a prototype. But you have to describe how the invention is built, how it works, and then claim what is new over the prior art. That's what we'll ask you. And everything, if it sounds good, everything's fine. The invention has to be useful and inventive. And if you try to, for example, claim a perpetual motion machine, a machine that takes less energy than outputs energy, in that situation, we'll probably question if you have a prototype or not, a functioning prototype. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank Dumitru for coming to Discovery and telling us about IP. I know it's, hey, the questions were interesting and more of them than in the other sessions. So IP is always an area of great interest. So look, this concludes today's presentations. Tomorrow's presentations start at 9:30, beginning with the National Angel Capital Organization.